Joining us now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. You never know what you're going to hear before you come on, Mr. Treasury Secretary. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Good morning.
Morning, Joe.
We have talked in the past about whether you wear different hats, and you have always said, I wear the Treasury Secretary hat. But can we talk about the meeting yesterday with the European leaders and with President Zelenskyy? We haven't talked to an administration official yet. Is the reporting correct that there will likely be a bilateral meeting and then perhaps one that includes President Trump? Is that where things stand right now?
Well, Joe, let's go all the way back to Friday, because I want to set the record straight on what went on in Alaska. Alaska was a show of force by President Trump. He invited President Putin to land that the Russians used to own. He displayed a huge amount of military hardware and then did a flyover. It was kind of like inviting your uncontrollable neighbor to your house and showing him your gun case. So then the President Zelenskyy, we had a very good meeting with him and his team in the Oval for about an hour and a half. And then we met with the European leaders. It was an incredible group to have in the White House, all led by President Trump. And yes, the culmination of that was a call with President Putin. And my strong belief is that there will be a bilateral meeting between President Putin and President Zelenskyy. And that's the only way to end this conflict, is to get the two sides talking.
There's such a large intersection between security and economics. I would think that anything that we arrive at, or that Ukraine arrives at with President Putin, to get him to, I don't know, for lack of a better term, to behave or to live up to all of the promises that are made, what type of economic considerations would be involved there, whether it's carrots or sticks? Because we've talked about he's made promises in the past that he hasn't lived up to, and there's a feeling that he's going to have to be induced to live up to whatever pieces is arrived at.
Well, I think the sense is that both sides are ready for this terrible conflict to end. And one of the ways to make President Putin want it to end is on the economic side. The Russian economy has 20% plus inflation. Right now, it is a war economy. I think more than 25% of the GDP is coming from the military buildup. So, you know, it's a very imbalanced economy. There are the frozen Russian assets. The runoff from those is now being used to finance the war. So, you know, there are a lot of moving pieces here, Joe. And then there's the Russian oil. We have planned to up the tariffs on India. These are secondary tariffs for buying the sanctioned Russian oil.
It was interesting watching just the dynamic with the president and the different leaders from Europe that were there. We had just finished a lot of negotiations on tariffs and trade, and everybody seemed to be getting along. It was a little bit surreal, was it not?
Joe, it was a optimistic, great day. Everybody's looking forward. The tariff discussions behind us, and that was very successful with Europe, and that's a very successful negotiation that President Trump completed in Scotland a few weeks ago, and now we can look forward to getting this terrible conflict solved.
Treasury Secretary Bessent, just in terms of already being done with those deals, I mean, there's still things that are popping up. The Financial Times had a story this week that pointed to the Digital Services Act and the Europeans really wanting to preserve the Digital Services Act and still be able to go after with that. And those are some of the non-tariff barriers that you all had been trying to negotiate and get rid of. It sounds like that is still there. Do you think this cooperation, this potential cooperation when it comes to Ukraine and Russia will end up affecting some of those economic talks that you've been having and will continue to have, I'm certain, for years to come?
Well, Becky, what you're talking about is the digital services tax, the DST, which is an unfair tax where some, not all, European countries tax our great internet companies. And, it's unfair because it's very specific to our companies. But again, Europe very often has a collective action problem. The tariff negotiations were with the EU. I can name a few. I believe it's Italy, France, Spain have the DST. Germany, Poland, others do not. So that's more at the national level than at the EU level. And the tariff negotiations were at the EU level.
But will the Digital Services Act be something that this administration pursues actively? I guess is question one. And question two, because of this cooperation that you see on areas like defense and national security, will that bleed into any of the conversations that are taking place on the economic side? I mean, I think it's key that you, as the Treasury Secretary, are involved in all of these conversations.
Yeah, look, I think that the DST is very different than security guarantees for Ukraine. Everyone wants this conflict to stop, and we're not going to let the DST stand in between that. But we are pushing back. We're pushing back on countries around the world. And the problem with the European countries doing it is once the European countries do it, then they set a global standard, and countries like India, Turkey, Brazil think it's okay to do it.